Listen, we have a situation where there is a perpetrator in the Quinton Simon case. A perpetrator is named by the police department, but we need to have them do their job to get the required evidence to bring whoever is responsible for the demise of this young 20-month-old baby. We need to bring them to justice and do it one time and do it the right way. I think it's important that we all look at each other and say, listen, I know that we are pissed off, we're mad as hell about a potential suspect walking amongst us, but there's criminals that are walking amongst us on a daily basis. We can't just go and tackle them and bring them in and say, I feel that you did this. You need to have the evidence to back it up.
Years later.
Let's listen to the highlights from day one of the trial of Lelani Simon.
Now I'm going to focus on the what she did and when things happened. I want you to just understand the sequence of events and what happened when. She takes his body and puts it in Dodge Journey, and she begins the cover-up. The cover-up is not just the lies to the police. The cover-up starts immediately. A little after 1 a.m., she drives down Buckhalter Road and comes into Ogeechee Road right here. And she pulls into this mobile home plaza. It's right here. Mostly what you're seeing is trees, but there are mobile homes in here. This is Azalea Mobile Home Plaza. There's a convenient stand-up dumpster sort of hidden away under some tree cover in the tree line there. And she throws Quinton's body away like a piece of trash at about 1:17 in the morning. She drives home. This is another export from her phone, showing that her phone was locked from 2:01 in the morning until 9:13 in the morning. And this is just kind of a shorthand way of saying that's roughly about the time she eventually goes to sleep. Now, Danny wakes up a little after 5, and he tries to wake her up to go to work. She's supposed to go to work with him. Remember, they work the same shift. And he cannot wake her up. She will not wake up. And he believes that all 3 children are there. He does not go over and check the packet plate. He doesn't even know that Quinton is gone. He can't wake her up to go to work, and he's annoyed by this because this is not the first time this has happened. And they are kind of tight on money. You're not going to get up and come to work and make money. We're not going to spend money on a babysitter today. And so he texts Michelle, hey, the kids are going to stay here with her today, Miss Michelle, at 5:20 in the morning. She says, okay. So he goes to work, and he clocks in at 6:11, 6 a.m. And he will clock out at 9:15, a little over 3 hours later. At 9:14, 1 minute before the clock out, he gets a call from the defendant. Now, this is a 21-minute call. He calls him, and the cover-up, initially I said, the cover-up starts with covering this up to him. Before she covered it up to the police, but before they ever even get involved, she's covering it up to Danny. She calls him and she tells him that she woke up, the front door was open, and Quinton was gone. And he would run out to his car, leave work, and come home, and stay on the line with her for 21 minutes. And this video shows him running out. That's Danny running out of work. As he's on the way home, on this call with the defendant where she's telling him she woke up and the front door was open, the security system on his house, opened and closed, or just opened, or just closed, having been open. Front door didn't open until 9:22 in the morning on October 5th. Now that's 6 minutes in, 6 or 8 minutes in to that call with Danny. And so the evidence is going to show that she's on the phone with him saying, I woke up and the front door was open, the front door was open. It's during that phone call that she's opening the front door. So you'll hear that she's essentially tampering with the scene, staging the scene to fit with her story before the police ever become involved. Danny gets home, babysitter Michelle got wind that this was going on. He comes over, Paul hears yelling, comes downstairs, and now everybody's there and they're looking for Quinton. And the defendant, of course, is the only person who knows where he actually is, and that's in a dumpster. And they call 911, and here's what the defendant says. Police show up a little before 10 a.m. and she repeats the same story to them. This is a missing child. So situations like this, it's all hands on deck. Everybody comes out. Forensics comes out. The forensics unit came out and had a drone up looking for Quinton. Patrol officers are being pulled from other beats, other areas of patrol, to canvass the area and look for Quinton in the woods, because this is a big deal and they take these things very seriously. One of the specialized units that responded after patrol officers had gotten there, John Wilkins shows up, and he's the one who conducts the first, what you call more like the first formal interview with the defendant. Most notable from that statement is when she says she went to bed and when she says she got up. And you'll hear that she tells him, I went to bed around midnight and I got up around 9. She doesn't say anything at all about this trip to Azalea Mobile Home Plaza a little after 1 a.m. She doesn't want to talk about that because that's the trip that she took to get rid of Quinton's body. No mention of the Azalea trip. I told you there were 2 trips, 2:04 earlier in the night, 10:11. Trip number 2 is that Azalea trip, a little after 1 a.m. And she is totally omitting that. There are detectives working on this case that aren't even out at the scene from the very beginning. The flock system is a series of cameras that are set up around town at major intersections or along busy roads. And what they do is they snap a picture of the license plates of all the cars that drive by. And police can use these for a number of different things. They can take that tag number of that individual, they can put it in the flock system and put a lookout out for them. If that tag hits on any other cameras, it'll alert the police and they can try again and make the traffic stop. Another thing that the police can do, and what Detective Robbins did, was look up vehicles registered to the defendant. She finds that Dodge Journey that the defendant drove to dispose of Quinton's body, and she puts it into the flock system, looks it up in the database to see what, if any, flock cameras that vehicle has hit on anytime recently. And she sees that that car has been out late at night, driving around on trips that the defendant hasn't mentioned yet. She radios that information, or maybe calls via phone. That's the Dodge Journey in the driveway at the time of the police response. She goes up to her armed with this information about the flock hits at night. He wants to know what these trips were about. So he goes up to her and he asks her, hey, did you go anywhere last night? And he's a savvy guy, so he's careful to tack on, like where the kidnapper could have followed you home. And she seems to know, the evidence will show that she seems to know that he knows something about this trip to Azalea that she took and has not mentioned to this point. And so she comes up with a story. But the story is that, that trip that I took away from my house shortly after 1 a.m., that was to go pick up Oragel from a friend at the Chevron. Now the Chevron is right next to Azalea Mobile Home Plaza. They're kind of right next to each other. And so that's her story. This is what she was doing, driving to that location at that time. This is the first appearance of the Oragel story, which lasts for about a week or so. She's trying to show him on her phone this trip on an app called Life 360. Look, if this trip was so sinister in nature, why is she trying to show it to him on her phone? The Chevron and Azalea Mobile Home Plaza are right next to each other, and looking at the screen, you can't necessarily tell which one she's at. Now, the police would later pull very precise GPS data from the phone that puts her not at the Chevron, but right at the dumpsters at Azalea. So that's the first appearance of the Oragel story, to explain the Azalea trip. And she omitted that to Wilkins, is now had to come up with a story to cover this trip.
The wife was really bothering me about almost 1 in the morning. She called Circle K to see if they got Misty that I used to work with, he has a lot of mouth problems, and asked her if she had any origin. Let her at a chevron. And I called her, and got that, and got home. You also 12 minutes. I did it for my like 360. I can show y'all right around. Everything was on the left outside your back. Get home, turn my mouth, check her all again to get in there, okay.
Now, a couple things about this initial interview in which she's asked to give an account of her movements for the last 24 hours. No mention whatsoever of the trip to the drug dealer. She doesn't want to talk about what she was doing that night in the state that it put her in. So that's omitted completely from this interview. And now she's put a name to the friend who gave her the Orajel, Misty. The police asked her to go through her phone, so she lets them go through her phone. A couple things they see is there's no call to Misty, and there's no call to Circle K to check and see if they have Orajel, which is something she said. They also see a message from the defendant to Danny. This is when she's leaving the Circle K and is about to go to the drug dealer at 10:30. Gonna run to 204, I guess. This is something that she had left out in this initial interview with Snyder and Lemons. Here's what she tells him. It was a trip to the drug dealer, but it wasn't actually to buy drugs. She tells him that the reason that she left the house at 10:30 at night and went to her drug dealer and was there for 10 minutes was simply to pay off a pre-existing drug debt in the amount of $20. The evidence will show that that story is just absurd on its face. But in addition to that, the cash out was for $80, not $20. And she'll later admit that this story wasn't true.
That you were turning on 204 to go meet with?
Yeah, like I'm turning on 204 now, like I'm not meeting him. That's what I was trying to tell him.
And at that point, you didn't get anything.
Because after all, she tells them, other than marijuana, I don't use drugs. And the reason they're asking her whether she got a Percocet from the drug dealer that night is that they had seen some messages about buying Percocets as well when they went through her phone. Messages with you look like you're buying Percocet, using Percocet. And her story at this time is, oh, those are for a friend. I'm just the middleman. She does not want to talk about her drug use that night because that contributed directly to the state of mind that she was in and relates so closely to her killing Quinton in the middle of the night. So she feels that she has to tell these lies. And she wants to focus on 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. because after all, this is an abduction. It's not as though I did anything in the middle of the night. My child was taken after Danny left for work. That's her story, that's what she's trying to sell. October 5th, they get statements from the defendant, where she's making all these claims that we've talked about. They get a statement from Paul, they get a statement from Danny. And so they go out and there are two real notable things that happen between the October 5th statements on day one and the next interview. And one is that they do what they call a video canvas. They go out to this Chevron area where she has said that this Orajel exchange happened. They go in and they ask if there's footage. And they get footage from the Chevron, and it does not show her stopping there. In fact, it shows her driving by. And they get footage from Azalea next door. What the Azalea footage shows is her pulling in, doing a loop around the complex, and pulling up to the dumpsters and sitting there for about 2 minutes. And that's when she throws Quinton's body away. This is her driving in the Dodge Journey after 1 a.m. on a mission to throw away her dead child. And they confront her with these two findings. One, the security footage from Azalea and from Chevron. And two, what Missy has told them. And she just sticks to the Orajel story and just insists that it is true. And this is what that sounded like.
Okay, because Missy hadn't talked to you.
Yeah, she has.
She hasn't talked to you in quite some time.
Yeah, she
Yes,
has.
she did not have a conversation with you about the Orajel.
So that's the story on October 8th, sticking to her guns. Now, October 12th, she comes in for another interview. And she tells this kind of flowery story describing this meeting. She lavishes them with details about how this went down.
So you went to Missy's house, and did you go inside her house? Or did you stand outside? How long did y'all interact there with Missy? How long did y'all talk?
2 minutes, it was a quick little conversation. We learned how to mouth, we learned she does some craft and stuff, she did how much she was outside.
Now she adds Misty was smoking crack when she gave the defendant the Horgel. The evidence will show that she added this detail to suggest a faulty memory on Misty's part. It didn't happen. So after insisting on the 5th that she met Misty at the Chevron for Horgel, and after insisting on the 8th that that was the truth, and after insisting even at the outset of this interview that it was true, she finally admits that it wasn't true and massages the inconsistency by saying, you know, I didn't speak to her. You've asked me if I threw any trash away there. Yeah, I did throw some trash away. There's a story for what that trash was. The evidence will show she did not want to admit that it was Quinton's body, so she describes this trash that she threw away as stinky shrimp pasta that had been sitting in the car in a trash bag and smelling up the car.
The whole person was standing there, so, what is that smell? I felt like before I even went to go to a floor. You know? I didn't go up there, I'm like, get out of the car.
This is the most critical fact in the case. Throwing Quinton's body in the dumpster at Azalea, what she was doing at Azalea Mobile Home Plaza at 1:17 in the morning or so. He does not want to talk about what was in that trash bag. They also revisit the drug use, and you'll remember that the strong denials on October 5th, which are repeated on October 8th. Well, in this October 12th interview, she admits finally that I did take a Percocet that night.
And you had the Percocet in conjunction with smoking?
Yes, that's what I took it as soon as I got home. I went outside and took a cigarette. By the time,
Then about what time would you have done that?
by the time I got home, I took it like 11 something.
And so Snyder asked her about her changing story. You've initially, over the course of 2 interviews, didn't mention throwing trash away. And now you've got a very detailed account about doing that and what it was. And you are adamant that you hadn't used any drugs other than marijuana. And now you're telling us that you did take a Percocet too. Why is the story changing? And her explanation for that is, oh, well, my faulty memory might have something to do with all the cocaine I was doing that night, which is a drug that had totally been absent from all of her prior accounts and fits much more with the $80 cash app in this story about paying off the drug front. October 12th, and we've come a long way from the October 5th account of only using marijuana that night. This is where we end up on October 12th. She's a regular user of cocaine, which she had denied in earlier interviews. Now, at the end of the day, the most critical thing though is what happened to Quinton. What happened to Quinton in the middle of the night. And here is what she had to say about that.
It was like, that was a lot behind emotion was a long thing, and I don't know if I did something to him, but if I did, I'll take our responsibility. Whatever y'all find, I will take our responsibility, but I'm talking to God. And y'all come home and tell my heart and well my arms. That's what I want.
I don't know if I did something to him, but if I did, I will take responsibility. It appears to be claiming something like a lack of memory. The evidence that you'll see is going to show that when she drove to those dumpsters at Azalea to throw Quinton's body away, you can see that she's driving normally. You'll see that she comes to a complete stop at stop signs. She uses her turn signal. You'll hear evidence that the investigators could tell from her phone that she plugged her phone into the USB charger in the car when she got in. So the evidence will show that she was aware of what she was doing when she took him there, and that her claims to just not know what happened cannot be true. They do not fit with the other evidence. October 18th, police announced that they believe Quinton's body to be in a local landfill, and that they're about to begin this extremely challenging needle in a haystack search of the landfill. And this is how they got there. A detective with the Chatham County Police Department goes out to the mobile home plaza, and he asks what garbage truck company services these dumpsters, and they give him that information. He gets in touch with that garbage truck company, and he learns that it was truck 3909 from a company called Waste Pro. This is on the morning of October 5th, actually. Quinton wasn't in the dumpster for very long because it was emptied that day. It's a front-loading garbage truck, extends its hydraulic forks into the slots on the side of the dumpster, and drops Quinton and all the other garbage into the box in the back of the truck. There's a compactor in that truck that compacts everything, and you want that compactor in there so that the truck doesn't have to go to the landfill as frequently. Makes the garbage smaller and take more garbage. That truck went to the Waste Management Superior Landfill on Little Neck Road on the morning of October 5th. And with this information, the detectives go out and talk to the landfill manager, and he's able to identify the area that garbage was being dumped and then kind of shoved to on October 5th. And this kind of general area up here, that becomes the search area. So they have kind of an idea, like a general box in the landfill of where Quinton is going to be found. But this is still an extremely difficult thing. Even if you know the general area, there's like 2 more days of trash that have since been dumped there since the 5th. And this stuff gets compacted and moved around. They drive these compactors over it that have studded metal rollers, and everything just gets shredded. At the end of the day, they have tons and tons of garbage to search through, and so they arrange the landfill search. They have some consultants from an outside agency come in and advise on this because it's a very technical thing. These consultants are able to tell, based on known rates of searching, estimate of how many people this is going to take and how much time it's going to take. They have to order specialized protective gear, steel-toed boots, Tyvek suits, respirators, gloves to put over the gloves. This is a biohazard environment. And they have to find volunteers, and this is an all-volunteer duty. Right? And for weeks, volunteers from the police department and from some other law enforcement agencies came out here early in the morning, and they do this landfill search that involves an excavator up in the search area, scooping up garbage, putting it in a dump truck. Dump truck comes down on this open area bounded by cones that they call the search deck. The excavator down here kind of spreads the garbage, that particular load, I think they were calling them lines, out onto the search deck. And these volunteers get online with rakes, and they just search through it. This is what that looked like. And they do this for days, weeks, in the heat, all that gear on. These efforts can only be described as heroic. They want to find Quinton. But that's what the police are doing while she is playing games with investigators and changing her story and changing her story again. October 24th, while the landfill search is underway, the defendant is still playing games. This is October 24th, that's 19 days. And after several interviews where her story has just been shot to pieces, she does this interview where she holds herself out as the victim of a child abduction, still on that, and has the gall to make an appeal to the public to just please bring Quinton home safe. And the evidence will show that she knows he's not safe. and she knows he's not coming home. She sends this text message to Savannah Solomon of the FBI. And this is just the latest Hail Mary. After all the statements about going to the Chevron and then going to Azalea and what she was doing there, and I was actually throwing away trash and not Quinton, October 24th, the same day as that news interview, she and Danny are split. And so now's the perfect time to try to put it on Danny. I'm not lying for Danny anymore. The reason why my story about Oragel and shit didn't make sense was because Danny told me to say that he was the one who left, and my phone was in the car from my previous trip. And the reason she says that is her phone GPS puts her at the dumpsters too, not just the video. The evidence will show that it was clearly not true. It was a desperate attempt to just try something new. November 18th, it's a memorable day for the people who are involved in this landfill search. Because they find Quinton, and he's not in good shape. Okay, they find him in pieces. Mostly bones, a foot. It's not as though he's in one place on that search deck. They're finding bones in different lines, spread out. He's torn apart. They send Quinton's remains up to the FBI lab at Quantico, Virginia, where DNA analysis is done. They confirm what everybody already knew, is that this is Quinton. And the defendant comes in for one last interview. When they found Quinton after tracing the trash and making it undeniable that what she was throwing away in that dumpster at Azalea was her son's body, the best she could do in her last interview is to claim a total and complete lack of memory from seeing him in his pack and play at 10-something to snapping back into consciousness on the way home from Azalea. Now, she just can't remember anything that happened during the critical time period in this case. The murder and the disposal of the body. What will the trial look like? Trial's not like an opening statement. All right, we bring witnesses in one at a time. It can be kind of disjointed and choppy because each individual comes in and they can only talk about really their role and what they did, heard, saw, that sort of thing. You'll hear from the investigators who took these statements and followed up on them. You'll hear from some of the people who were involved in this search of the landfill. You'll hear from some of the scientists at Quantico who were tasked with identifying Quinton and seeing what they could make of these remains, which are just totally torn apart. What I do not expect you will hear is exactly how the defendant killed Quinton. And that's because she covered it up. It's because she got rid of the body. All right, the evidence will show that her specific intent from the outset was that he never be found at all. And him being found in pieces, little bitty pieces, was the next best thing. The judge will tell you that in a case like this, we do not have to prove exactly how the defendant killed Quinton. Under these circumstances, how could you? And that is a sensible rule. Because what we have to prove, what is important, is not exactly how she killed him, but that she killed him. The fact that she did it. And the evidence that we will present to you will do that. It will do that, beyond a reasonable doubt. So at the end of the case, when all the evidence is in, we will make our closing arguments, and we will ask you to find her guilty of all of the charges in the indictment.